I think this is pretty important. If you've had a relationship with a narcissist, you know for sure that they will say something like that. They'll make a snarky comment, and if you react or you don't laugh, they're going to cover it by saying, "Hey, I'm only joking. Don't take things so seriously. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. You don't have to take jokes," and so on. And it can be really disconcerting when they do this because, maybe it is just a joke. Maybe we are being too sensitive. However, there is a filter, and I think you're going to love this. There is a filter to determine, is it really a joke? And this is something we don't often think about, is, hi UNA, welcome. How do we know that something is a joke? It seems that when someone says something with a smile, it's a joke, isn't it a joke? We can debate this. But I like to refer to a framework that was created by someone who's a professional comedian, Scott Adams. He's a cartoonist. He does the Dilbert cartoon. I highly recommend that you follow him, follow his content in terms of understanding gaslighting, manipulation, thinking clearly. WDG. So, sorry, DJW. Welcome. So Scott Adams, great follow. He's a professional cartoonist. He understands humor. And he suggests that there are different dimensions to humor, which I will be sharing with you right now. So in other words, for something to qualify as a joke, it needs to meet at least two of these criteria. The first criteria is one that you might not like, which is that something can be mean. And this is what the narcissists do. They will say something that's mean and say, "I'm only joking." Okay, maybe. But if it's just mean, that's not a joke. That doesn't qualify. First criteria, mean. The second criteria might be something like, I just think of a logical order. How about this? Something absurd. So something absurd could be, you make a mean comment to someone, but it's so completely ridiculous that you just go, "What? That doesn't even make any sense." Therefore, it qualifies more as a joke. First one, mean. Second one, absurd. The third one might be smart or witty. A lot of English humor is about wittiness, but wittiness is usually mocking ourselves. There's an interesting distinction with French humor. French humor is a lot about mocking other people. So there's some cultural nuance here. If it's mean and if it's smart or witty, well, then it can be funny. There's more nuance to come through. Hey, Charlie, good to see you. Excellent. So smart, witty. The fourth one is cute. And that's anything that's got to do with animals, cats, children, babies. You see a baby fall over and and it's funny. It's a little bit mean because it fell over, but as long as nobody got harmed, then it's sort of fine. So you got mean, absurd, smart, witty. The next one is naughty. So that's anything. A lot of jokes involve that, the naughtiness side. And let me see, I'm forgetting one. I should have noted this down, of course, before. So mean, absurd, cute, and I'll look up the other one as I talk to you. They'll make it easier. The idea here, of course, is that if you only have, that's it, absolutely. It's this one. Recognizable. Cognizable. So absurd, and that another one here for absurd was bizarre. Okay, so it's funny because I was thinking about that. It's something maybe I do sometimes with my live streams when I say, for example, if you're walking down the street and someone walks up to you and starts headbutting you, you don't put up with it. So this situation might be a bit mean. It's completely absurd because nobody would headbutt you in the street. And it might be recognizable because there's something similar with a narcissist who goes around and starts insulting you. But if somebody insults you in the street, you might wonder, well, what did I do wrong? So there's this bizarre difference where if it's headbutting, we know it's not okay, but if it's insults, we think, well, it might be okay. If you're in a restaurant and somebody walks up and starts insulting you, you might be concerned you did something wrong, but if they start headbutting you, you know that the reaction is too harsh. So sometimes I try to convey this because a lot of the situations with narcissists objectively are completely absurd and bizarre when we see from the outside. And hopefully when I talk about it, it's recognizable. But usually what we notice is that the situations to them are mean. Anyway, back to the situation where they make a comment. So they're making a comment towards you. Okay, fine. They are claiming that it's just a joke. Okay, fine. So how many dimensions do we have? Let's examine. If they go, well, you look fat. Okay, first of all, is that factual? Maybe it is. Is it mean? Well, yeah, said that way, you look fat. It is mean. Is it absurd or bizarre? Nope. Is it smart or witty? Nope. Is it cute? Nope. Is it naughty? Nope. Is it recognizable? No, it isn't. It's just a mean comment. Period. That's it. If they say something like, you seem insecure. Okay, that's just mean. There's nothing funny about it. Oh, I'm just joking. No, if you were teasing somebody in a likable way, it wouldn't only have the dimension of being mean. There'd be more to it. They'd have to have some level of intelligence, of being smart, of being witty, or being absurd. Now, that's one point. Another point is we can, instead of just saying, is there dimension, as you know me, I like to add a bit of nuance, we can say, how intense is this dimension? So if we take the meanness, how would we rate it from 0 to 3? Is it 3 out of 3 of meanness, or is it closer to 1 or 2? If it's like poking a little bit to getting a bit of reaction, maybe it's not a 0, it might be a 1. Okay, so it's poking, mildly annoying. But it's not mean, it's not whacking someone with a baseball bat. If the meanness is low, fine. If it's high, well, it had better be really witty to compensate with that. Or the person says, that was mean. Listen, it was just a joke. It was for the laugh. I don't mean it. Okay, so there's a willingness to dampen the blow that comes afterwards. I remember making a joke at one point. So it's a spoonerism. So it was a spoonerism. It was naughty. Somebody else was, quote unquote, the butt of the joke. She didn't understand what happened. And I went up to her afterwards and I said, listen, let me explain what just happened. I was doing a joke. I was just placing something. It had nothing to do with you. If you're upset, I understand it and I apologize. And she just listened and she thought, well, actually, it was rather funny. I wished I'd understood the joke. So she had a great sense of humor. But the goal was not to upset her. The goal was to say something that would amuse. Sometimes, you say the naughty thing. And in the situation, it's bizarre or absurd to say that, or sometimes it sort of slips between, people don't notice it. So we can assess all of this 0 to 3. And, based on that, we can assess what kind of joke is it. If there is only one dimension, that's not a joke. Like if somebody shows you a photo of a baby, sure, it's cute. It's not a joke, It doesn't make sense. I go through the comments really quickly now. Yeah, exactly. It's only a joke. So deflection game, we can review that. Sarcasm enter the sarcasm enter the realm of the conversation. Yes, it can, but sarcasm is meant to have some level of of being smart and witty, probably some level of recognizable, possibly some level of absurd and bizarre, and some level of meanness. Fair enough. Maybe naughtiness. But it needs to have more than no intelligence to it. And even there, what's the goal? Is it to make a snarky comment, or is it to actually say something that's a bit funny? We should be able to laugh at ourselves a bit. This also depends on what is the intention. Is the intention to laugh, or is the intention to hurt? So we could also take just a goal here, a post here, and say, how much are we willing to hurt someone with the way we're doing this between 0 and 10. Logically, there's a certain point where it's just too painful because we know exactly how to press the buttons of someone. We know exactly how to upset them. There's another point where it might be slightly uncomfortable, and maybe that's the funny part where it's just a little bit uncomfortable, and there's a part where it's pretty much innocuous. So I'd suggest that for decent humor, aiming for the less painful part, it's fine. But then you need more dimensions, like more wittiness, more absurdity, something more cute. Well, cute and mean don't really go together, but you need something like that. That compensates. Otherwise, it's not a very good joke. If you fall into the mixed territory, this is where it gets pretty interesting. You see the best comedians, people such as Ricky Gervais. He's really good at going in there, walking right on the line where you feel a bit uncomfortable. And it's not mean. Well, it's mean, but it doesn't go overboard. He's really good at walking the line. I don't know how he does it. And quite often it makes us a bit uncomfortable, often because it's recognizable and a little bit true. But one of the keys here is, in case you overshoot and you go into the part where somebody is hurt, well, what do? You apologize. You know, if the person says, well, I'm only joking, you know, let's say you say a joke. It's meant to be a little bit abrasive, a little bit mean, but the goal is to amuse someone and not upset them. If they get upset, you go, well, obviously you know I'm joking, but I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. That wasn't the goal. Or listen, yeah, I went too far. You know it was not my intention, but clearly I missed the goal. I missed the mark, so I apologize. That's a decent thing to do. If we find ourselves apologizing systematically, and the other person is, you know, there's a bit of give and take. If they're joking at our expense and they can't take it back, well, you know that there's an imbalance here, so that's not a great thing. You know that if it's sort of give and take, it can be fine, but if you go overboard, if you go a bit too far, well, the decent thing to do is to backpedal and say, that wasn't the goal, I clearly upset you, I'm sorry. And that's it. Then you've got two questions. You know, what was the intention, and what does the person think the intention was? If the person thinks your intention was to hurt them, you need a very specific conversation. If they understand the intention was not to hurt them, but you did hurt them and you apologize, then it's a very different conversation. But what we observe with narcissists is that quite often the intention is to hurt, is to trigger reaction, and they're not going to apologize. And you might go, listen, you just made a joke about a very sensitive topic. I know I should be laughing, but I'm sorry. Please just don't joke about that. Normally people just back off and go, okay, that one's off limits. Which makes me think, you want to hear a joke that really upsets someone? I just go through the comments quickly before I do that. Hi, R. Hansen. Hello, Martina. Sarcastic, low humor, a lot of it on current American TV. Yes. It's so interesting. US audiences, UK audiences are really different. It's something really puzzles me. I see a lot of US humor that I don't get, because to me it seems like it's a little bit recognizable and a little bit cute, and that's it. And I don't see the wittiness that I'm used to, or the absurdity. So it's possible different cultures weight things differently. Monty Python, for example, is very high on the absurd. Shows like Blackadder, which I highly recommend, is high on the wittiness and the mean, a little bit on the meanness, but on the wittiness. Not so much recognizable. And then like something with like Benny Hill back in the 70s, that was a bit on the absurd, a bit on the mean, a bit on the naughty, a very 70s mix, very, very, very strange to see that, and also understand how different times had different levels of humor. Yeah, exactly. With Ricky Gervais, absolutely. He often does really witty digs that are also funny. So it's not a ha-ha joke, but it's got a bit of the meanness at people who maybe need a little bit of knocking down, but without going too far, without being, well, you know, attacking too much a person. So it's really interesting, the work that he did. Also the TV shows, so the stand-up he did, the TV shows he did. Mona, hi also to everyone in Paris. Someone uses an anecdote or metaphor. Are you having a dig at me? Let me think about that. Well, if they're doing that, if they're saying, so it's happened to me, I'll tell the story and someone says, why are you attacking me? And like, I'm telling a story. You know, I'm not necessarily trying to bring a point across, but why are you interpreting it that way? I remember actually telling stories and somebody was automatically getting offended. Remember, if someone chooses to get offended systematically, this is where the baseline is important. If they're choosing systematically to get offended, well, that tells us they want to get offended. And they'll be interpreting things in order to get offended, which is, it's their right. It just makes things tiring. And, if this is the weird thing where we don't want to react like narcissists, but sometimes just answering with questions of going, are you assuming that I'm trying to have a dig at you? Like, why would I do that? Or it might just be saying, well, obviously not. I'm sorry, but sometimes then you have to downgrade the tone of conversation. Instead of being more carefree and more fluid and just joking in good faith, just shut down a bit. I'm sorry that you have the impression I'm making a dig at you. That is clearly not my intention. Close up and observe that you're safe to actually say anything. If people, I could feel the macro expression there of anger coming out. It's happened to me so often. People who play this game to just remove joy from others. But if that's the case, observe them and decide if you want to spend more time around them. I think that's really important. Happy you enjoyed the metaphor, the museum. That's also, there you go, recognizable, absurd. I don't know if there's any meanness, but especially recognizable and absurd. And I try to add a few things to make it like a little bit, recognizable, absurd, hopefully a bit smart and a bit witty, Okay, here's a story. A joke that massively, massively offended a vegan. Nothing against vegan people, nothing against people who make their own dietary requirements. I was talking with this vegan lady and I was trying to understand the logic. Because I'm curious, I like logical things, like what is the thinking that goes into this? And I was trying to understand, like, under what circumstances do you find, she was saying that eating meat is not ethical. Like, okay, you believe that. You're not talking about if we need it as a dietary, as part of our diet, but you say ethically it's not okay to eat meat, okay? How come? Because of the way they're treated. Okay, so how about open range farms? Is that ethical? Well, it's better, but she said it still isn't ethical. Okay, so I go, well, what happens if, for example, you're in the wilderness and there's a wild cow that is standing on a mountain, slips off the cliff, falls down, breaks its neck, and rolls into a fire and cooks? Nobody killed the cow. The cow has never seen a human being in her life. And she just happens to be dead, fresh, so you can eat the meat. What would you do then? And she got, I see the cockroach collection. Oh, we have a troll. Excellent. CM. Hi. Brilliant. I'm going to address that question afterwards. This is hilarious. I love the trolls or NPCs. We'll see. I don't know if you're joking about this, but if you're joking about that, that's one dimension. That's not. That is actually. That you need to do a bit more to it to make that a joke, if that's a joke. And if it's just an insult, this is hilarious because it says a lot about people who throw out insults. Anyway, back to the cow story. So I asked, if the cow rolls into the fire, do you eat it? And she started getting a bit nervous. And then I thought, let's make this really absurd. A little bit mean, really absurd. And I say, so what happens if... Let's say there's a storm and you're by a lake, there's a thunderstorm, and you take a cow and you put the cow on a raft and you put a metal hat on top of the cow, a metal helmet, and you push it out so it might get struck by thunder and then it's going to fry and you have a meal. Like, in that case, what happens? To me, absurd, obviously, because you're not going to put a cow out on there. That's cruel, that's mean. But this woman got furious. She started insulting me, going, that's horrible, that's mean to the cow, how can you do that? And I'm like, you've got to realize this cow doesn't exist. I just invented this cow. The cow doesn't really exist. Nobody's talking about doing this. The whole point here is that it's completely absurd to do this, like 3 out of 3. It's not recognizable. There's something mean to it. There's something also a bit witty about the thing of, you're really going out of your way to set an accident up to happen, to then go, well, I had nothing to do with the accident. So clearly it's bizarre. In this case, she got really upset, and I had to say, listen, obviously I wasn't trying to offend you. The cow doesn't exist. I'm just trying to imagine a really absurd situation, because I think it's funny to imagine absurd situations, if we're just imagining them. And she was upset. So I said, well, I apologize. I'm sorry. The goal was to amuse you. Clearly, I missed the mark. Clearly, I shouldn't be joking about animals when it comes to you, even if I imagine the animals, even if I'm trying to, well, imagine something completely absurd. Clearly, the entire topic is off. And she said, yeah, don't joke about this with me. It's too sensitive. Fine. Okay. What did I do? I apologized. My intention was to amuse, was not to upset, but I recognized I missed the mark. Okay. And that was pretty much it. She accepted my apology and she calmed down a bit. She says, yeah, it's just a very emotional topic. Fine. I shouldn't joke about that topic around you. I apologize. I got it wrong. I didn't calibrate it to get the right response. The response I wanted was to amuse you, was to, make you laugh, because I think laughing is fun and I think laughing is good to get people together, and was laughing at the expense of a cow that I imagined. But, we could, well, okay, not an animal, so I don't know, but I was willing to imagine something. Like, you could imagine something that involves destroying, let's say, a guitar. Something would upset me if it was a real guitar, but if you just imagine it, then okay, fine, I don't care, but I'm less sensitive than you are, so we've got different sensitivities. So it's hard to get a metal hat for a cow. Big fail, excellent. Oh, okay, CM, right, if you're joking, that's fine. I can't tell when it comes to the comments to know if people are teasing me or winding me up. But anyway, there are a few comments in the videos that were not well calibrated, put it that way. So anyway, happy that you're taking it with a smile. Yeah, so there we go. When it comes to people saying, I'm just joking, first filter, how many dimensions of humor do you have? If it's only being mean, that's not a joke. To what extent have you calibrated this? So how much meanness is in there versus the rest? If it's only meanness, just forget about it. That is not a joke. If there are other elements, fine. If it hurt you too much, then, and if you point it out and just go, I'm sorry, I don't really find that funny, what is the response? If the response is, well, the problem is you, okay, maybe the problem is me. What if I'd said that to the vegan girl? Well, the problem is you. Okay, I'm basically telling her, you can go and screw yourself because I'm not interested in maintaining a relationship with you. Like, what kind of horrible person would say that? She doesn't have a humor about animals. Okay, I won't joke about it. If I don't want to hang out with her, then I don't hang out with her. I've learned that when people are vegan, typically don't joke about animals around them because they've got no sense of humor. All right. Hopefully I've got other jokes up my sleeve. I can think of other things. And sometimes I might just, if they're around, I might just giggle and just not say anything and say, listen, I'm thinking of something that's inappropriate. I don't want to share it because it's likely to upset you and I don't want to upset you. So it's funny because it's inappropriate. But, the goal of humor is to bring people together. This actually is a point where, what is the goal of laughing? Like the psychologically, laughing is here. This is one of the functions of different emotions, to tell us we are safe together. We can relax. That's why laughing and humor is so important. And when people try to destroy humor, they're basically trying to destroy the bond that unites us. And when people mislabel meanness as humor, they're trying to pollute the human connection. Humor is one of the most beautiful things to unite us, to make life a bit more bearable. The suffering we have, make it more bearable. To laugh in the face of, tyranny and cruelty and all the difficulty. Humor is something that we really need to have a better experience of life. So when people weaponize it the wrong way, or they pretend that it's humor, it's terrible. When they try to deny humor from others, it's also really sad. IR, good to see you. Merry 2023. And how is it possible the person don't say hi and only called you on holiday? I'm not sure, Raquel. Could you explain that question a little bit more? Okay, Charlie, good joke. There we go. That's what I wanted to say about the. Oh yeah, there's something else about jokes. Let's also establish what the baseline is. If you take the person's last 10 jokes, and most of them are innocuous and fun and so on, and one of them is a little bit abrasive, okay, fine. But if all of the jokes systematically are prodding you and trying to wind you up, that tells you what the baseline is. That tells you what they think is funny. Something really bizarre with narcissists, I don't know why, it's like the ones I've met, and I met quite a few, unfortunately, seem to have no sense of humor. If you ask what makes them laugh, if you ask what amuses them, if you ask what comedy they like, the answer typically tends to be things that are just strange. And I'm not sure why this is, but I remember a number of them just saying, show me videos you like. They might pull out things of good taste, but sometimes they laugh at the wrong moments. Or if you ask them to come up with a joke. I knew one guy, the pseudo architect, the guy who claimed to be an architect. He had loads of jokes, but all of them were copied from the internet. He couldn't make up a joke to save his life. He couldn't even tell stories in a way that was funny. Another one, her favorite joke was something that just was on one of the lowest levels. So a little bit cute, probably 1 out of 3 of cuteness and 1 out of 3 of wittiness, and that was it. And when you dig a bit more about how they process it, it might have something to do with the way that their brains work. They like laughing at others, but they don't really understand the absurd. I'm not sure exactly what it is. That's something to bear in mind. By the way, using this filter, Dilbert is really successful because Dilbert is recognizable, is smart and witty, is absurd, bizarre, and is often mean. Gary Larson, who's complete genius, it starts being absurd and bizarre with dinosaurs driving cars, often witty, sometimes cute, sometimes a bit recognizable, and that's it. And then Calvin and Hobbes, one of the best comics ever, is clearly cute, often absurd and bizarre, often smart and witty, sometimes recognizable. Don't really think mean or naughty, but sometimes recognizable, like we remember things from our childhood, which makes it even more cute, which is it's complete genius. So I suggest keep this list in mind when you look at jokes, and also see how are the jokes received, how are they calibrated, like what makes people, how do people react to it, and which people? And then, like I said, look at the baseline of the jokes that are coming in your direction. Let me go through the comments. Okay. Okay, I'll try to answer that, Raquel. How is it possible a person doesn't say hi, only calls you on holiday? Maybe they're busy, maybe they want to disrupt your holiday. I don't know. Maybe something happened, maybe they had something else, and then all of a sudden they're available. I can't tell. It really depends on too much about different situations. Yeah, by the way, this is something, I appreciate that. Something when we stop finding things funny, that's one of the symptoms we have that we're in a toxic relationship. We lose our sense of humor. We lose our joy. We lose our capacity to enjoy things we used to enjoy. This is really important. When we stop laughing, when life becomes less fun, something is going seriously wrong. This is pretty important to remember. We want to pay attention to the different symptoms we have that things are going wrong, things are going off track, because it's one of the fastest ways to correct this. When we lose the taste for life, often there's some toxicity around that. There's no reason to lose it. Anyway, we can talk more about that. Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. Oh, Mona, that's really, really sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah, I should have posted this live stream earlier. I was feeling so I wasn't sure I'd be able to make it. So there we go. Yeah, maybe humor takes practice. They don't get it from the. Listen, humor takes some level of practice, some level of wit. I think they often learn to mimic intelligence, and real humor requires some creativity. And also some vulnerability. You make a joke, and if people don't laugh, what do you do? So if you get defensive and go, well, the problem is you, it's not really helpful. Pick your audience. Mona, are you serious? Oh my goodness, that is so. Thank you. That is so generous of you. I don't know what to say. That's unreasonably generous. Thank you so much. Thank you. And CM, I'm sorry about before. I had. So, as a matter of fact, let me address this. Let me address this. When you were asking, am I a narcissist? Listen. Also, Mona, thank you so much. Listen, when I found out about narcissists and psychopaths, I found out about the Hare psychopathy test. And I was seeing a therapist back then, and I told her, listen, I did the hair psychopathy test because I'm worried. What if I am a psychopath and I don't know it? And she started laughing, and she said, just the fact that you're worried that you're a psychopath pretty much tells us you're not a psychopath. So if I recall properly, the hair test, you answered like 23 questions, and you can answer with 0, 1, or 2. So you score yourself on 46 points. And I'm not quite sure how it works, but I was somewhere, if I recall properly, in the low teens, which is pretty low, probably second quartile, something like that, just around 25%, something like that. And it's something that I've been thinking about, writing about different toxic traits. These are behaviors. So it's something I keep saying. These are behaviors all of us can have sometimes. I think what's important is recognizing it when we have it, to understand, well, does it bother me that I have it? And am I trying to, do I not care? Am I trying to decrease it? And I think I do my best to decrease whatever toxic behaviors I have. I've got less than before. I don't think I had that much before compared to most people. It's debatable, of course. My goal is to have less and find the right balance. So, and then, it's a weird thing. Like even having a YouTube channel talking about narcissism and seeing other channels, maybe some people actually say I'm a narcissist. I'm milking this, like I'm making money off it, off YouTube. Fine. Ideally, I would have done a channel just without showing my face, just doing the voice and voiceover. But it's more work. It's a bit of laziness on my side to do that. And I try to not put my own story forward because I don't think it's relevant. I think it's the ideas. What I'm trying to do is be a platform to share the ideas that I thought were helpful, so that other people can embrace the ideas or reject the ideas, and we can debate the ideas. That's really what interests me. And to what extent do I have the various traits? From what I've seen, to a low enough extent that it's not a problem in my life or anybody else's life, and I try to reduce it. And if anything, sometimes I need to be more disagreeable and more firm than I would naturally be otherwise. I will be doing a video, by the way, about psychometrics tests, and I think about it. I'm not going to do it now because there's some level of detail I'd like to share, which is going to be providing a bit more nuance than the simple fake dichotomy narcissist empath, which might be a good segue into another topic, by the way. So thank you for that. And by the way, when I get these questions, I take them seriously. I've observed that sometimes I've engaged with people who made comments that were a bit snarky. And when you dig a little bit, some people say, well, the wording wasn't great. But other people become really defensive and sometimes get quite aggressive. So it's very hard to see when I see the comments. So, I'm sorry, I reacted not so much for what you wrote, but given the context before. So there we go. Okay. Let me just see. Yeah, exactly. Narcissism, never worry about the question. Yeah, that's a good question. When's the last time people really laughed with an open heart? That's big thing, by the way. Making sure our heart is open. This is a thing, by the way, actually quite important. When we're afraid of being hurt, we can close our heart. When we close our heart, we're trying to protect ourselves from pain, from sadness and being hurt from the outside. Now, when we close our heart, we protect ourselves from pain. We block off emotions, including anger, sadness, and fear, but we also block off joy, and we also protect ourselves from love. A life without love is a life without happiness and joy, and without savoring the beauty of life. It's removing the taste of life. One thing I do when I do the energy healing is we work on specific points where things are trapped. And one of the points is the heart chakra, which is mind-blowingly painful when we work on it. We really press it and we sort of break down the wall that's protecting the heart. The thing is, we break down the wall, it's painful, but then our heart can start breathing again. This seems metaphorical, but it feels so real. When my teachers did it to me, I was in pain for probably 5 days, 7 days. Just wearing a t-shirt touching my skin was so painful because I'd been so good at building up this wall to protect myself. But then protecting myself from being hurt, well, being hurt is the price I pay for being alive. So I've got the choice. I can protect myself and lead a miserable life that's comfortable, or I can accept pain and also accept joy and accept love. And since I did that, and I do it on a regular basis because I'm just really good at building up walls, I laugh much more. Life is more beautiful. Yeah, it's so important. There's something you can try doing, by the way. It works better when you do energy healing, but you can just try it. Put your hand on your heart chakra. Give yourself love. Just imagine warm golden light flowing through your hand onto your heart. You can imagine you've got a little igloo built around your heart that's there to protect your heart, and the warm golden light is there to melt it so your little heart can enjoy the sunshine and the wind and the blue sky and the fresh air and the sound of birds instead of being locked away in a small igloo. Try that and see what happens. And if you need to cry, cry, let it out. And you want to scream, scream, let everything out so your little heart can breathe. Because, well, we've got limited time on this earth. If we're not enjoying that, we're really missing out. Narcissists will make us build a wall up, which is fine. We need to do that to protect ourselves from them. Then once we know we're okay, it's a good idea to get rid of that so we can enjoy life again. Yeah, okay, let me see. Personality, okay. Very quickly about personality tests. Hi, Jesse, good to see you. Very quickly about personality tests. You've got type-based personality tests, which are like the Myers-Briggs. You're INFJ, or you're this. You're an introvert, or you're an extrovert. You've got other ones like the Big Five that are interesting because they will say between introversion and extroversion, you are somewhere along the line. Hey, you know what? I'm actually going to switch back to the iPad because you'll understand this better. So, the Myers-Briggs would say introvert or extrovert. With, for example, the Big Five, they would say between introversion and extroversion, you are, for example, at 40%. Yeah, 40%. So you're on the introversion side. The issue with the Myers-Briggs is that they don't differentiate whether you are at an extreme or you're just next to the middle. And there's a massive difference between exactly where you are. Most people would be somewhere along here. So it's one thing to be roughly in the middle. You know, if we're doing a bell curve, bell curves are amazing. If you're doing a bell curve, it's extremely different to know if you're at an extreme or you're somewhere here. This is where the bulk of the population is. So there you'd have more in common with the bulk of the population than if you're at one extreme. Now, with the methods that I like, which are the trait ones, they would basically say, we're going to measure your introversion and we're going to measure your extroversion. So it's possible that your introversion is at slightly different scale, 80%. So in a room of 100 people, 20 people would be more introverted than you, and 79 people would be less introverted than you. And at the same time, we will measure your extroversion, and your extroversion might also be at 80%. So in a room of 100 people, 19 people would be more extroverted than you, and 79 would be less extroverted. And we can have both opposing qualities, which is called a paradox. This is something that's not reflected in Myers-Briggs, not reflected in the Big Five, and it makes a world of difference when we start seeing things this way. Instead of being one or the other, we can have both opposing energies. For instance, when it comes to, I should actually have done the introversion blue to follow the disk model. Here we go. Do that in blue. For instance, with the psychometrics test I did, I'm super high in logic. And you can see that from my channel. And I'm also extremely high in the people-focused and the empathy. And which is a pretty big paradox. But I understand the logic of empathy, and because I have empathy, we share the logic because I like sharing logic so people can embrace it, can think about it, we can work through it together, which is a completely different approach. So I will, I'll talk about that another time. Let me go through the comments really quickly. Is it similar to ego death? Ego death is a little bit different. Ego death largely is about observing, putting the ego aside. It's a very strange thing when we experience it. That's a big different topic to get into, I think. Can you identify someone who's been abused before, their body language, shape, especially if you see before and afterwards? You can put it this way. Maybe, you wouldn't say it with certainty, you'd say something has changed that indicates something. You see in the micro-expressions that there's a lot of sadness, there's fear, there's something going on that has indicated a change. That if you see the before and after, change from the baseline. Does Myers-Briggs account for masking comment in? I don't think so. When it comes to Myers-Briggs, I don't think so. I'm not enough of a specialist on that, but I don't see how it would. So the important thing is not everyone is coming from the same benchmark. I'm not sure I understand your comment, Charlie. If you want to explain that more, then I'll answer it. I don't want to answer if I misunderstood. Oh yeah, so Jesse, the context against which you're being measured is the general population. It's the overall sample. So if you're taking as a benchmark 100,000 people, you're measured compared to 100,000 people. If the benchmark is 10 people, it's a little bit low. But usually with these tests, especially the proper ones, we're talking about benchmarks of tens or hundreds of thousands of people. So, it's not the entire population. However, if you're at one extreme of 100,000 people, probably you're not at the other extreme if you took 100 million people. Probably. And it seems when they do this, regardless of culture, it sort of works out. So it's actually done pretty seriously. Who's measuring? It's psychologists, psychotherapists. It's done rigorously, not jokes. The proper tests, so the more recent tests, the ones that are trait-based instead of being type-based, they created them because the type-based ones were not enough. Just introvert or extrovert, it's too simplistic. And even here, it's more an assessment, not even assessment, a portrait. So it's saying this is what the portrait shows you. You tell us if it works or not. We're not going to tell you this is who you are. We're going to show you what the test shows, and we use this as a basis for a conversation instead of this is how you fit in. It's one of the things I like about it, because if you're 80% introverted, 80% extroverted, is this something that you notice? Does it seem to make sense? If so, how not? Rather than we're going to put you into a box. That's what I hate with the type-based ones. They put you into boxes. Even the big five that I liked, it's like, well, under some circumstances I'm more introverted, others I'm more extroverted, and there was a lack of nuance. But these other ones, which I'll talk about more, they're fantastic. Or actually, you know what? You can find this one. Here, do a bit of advertising. If you look it up, Lumina Splash. You find that on the App Store. You can do a basic test for free. I'll talk about it another time, but it'd be really interesting to see what people get, and then for me to dive into it. I'd like to do another proper video on that. There we go. So I test extreme much more than an INFJ. Okay. Yeah, maybe we are NPCs in the Matrix. Now, something else I wanted to touch upon that I think might be interesting is something I've come across quite a bit. It's, and we see a lot online when we talk about narcissism, is the whole notion of empaths and empathy. Something I didn't know is the origin of empaths. It might be one of you told me about it, as a matter of fact. The origin is an episode of Star Trek where Captain Kirk and Spock, Mr. Spock, not Dr. Spock, go to a planet where there's a woman who is an quote-unquote empath. And she has the capacity to feel somebody else's pain. And if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the episode, she dies because of somebody else's injuries. So it's something like she absorbs the pain of the person to help them heal. So you go, well, this is not really helpful. I mean, if someone's got an injury, let their body deal with it. If someone's got some problem, let them deal with it. Maybe support them, but don't try to take on their pain. It's something I understood also being in situations with narcissists where they use this to manipulate others. They will make us imagine the pain they have because they're sadists, and often will do it because we think we're being helpful. And it's like the image I take is, if I put my hand on a burning frying pan, you're probably going to feel pain. But if you feel pain or not, does it change my pain? It doesn't change my pain. It just makes you suffer needlessly. So you're feeling the pain. You don't know if the frying pan is really on. You don't know if it's burning. You don't know if I'm really putting on a glove or holding a glove to not feel the pain. And maybe I'm just doing this to make you feel pain because I think it's fun, or because I want you to put your hand on the frying pan instead of mine. So part of it is manipulation. The thing there is, if somebody's harming themselves, maybe just let them work it out, because maybe they're just using this to manipulate others. And that happens really quite often. Oh, Steve, hi, good to see you. Welcome. So, with empaths and empathy, I've noticed, and this is a really weird thing where I've been struggling with the opposition between, here we do it in green, empathy. Wait. So, with the psychometric system I use, these are subcategories. Empathy is a subcategory of being people-focused, and logic is a subcategory of being outcome-focused. And I think, well, hopefully one of the particularities of this whatever it is, YouTube channel, is combining both empathy and logic. Empathy for yourself, but also, what is the logic of empathy? What is the logic of emotions? What is the logic of all of this psychology? Not just being on the touchy-feely side, but also being in the logical side, and combining the two. Choosing one over the other, to me, is a fake dichotomy. We need both, obviously. Obviously, we need logic to function, because otherwise we're lost. And obviously, we need emotions to function, because otherwise we're lost. And people who say you should choose one over the other, they're really up to no good. Why deprive ourselves of two different forces that both offer something valuable, simply because someone tells us we have to pick? Like, we don't have to pick. It's like choosing to walk on your left leg instead of your right leg. Like, you can hop around if you want, but you're much better off walking on both legs. Or use your left brain instead of your right brain. First of all, that's nonsense. And secondly, just use everything. It's a fake dichotomy. It's been debunked, by the way, which I didn't know. Read a book about it, completely debunked the left brain versus right brain. It's nonsense. And Steve, hi. So, good question. How do you expose feigned empathy for kids and animals? Now, first of all, why would you expose anything to anyone? Just observe. You want to expose to someone. What's the point of doing that? But I would suggest, and this is a rather bizarre one, where we using the logic and the empathy. If someone really has empathy, they want to make a difference. If someone really has empathy, they need to produce some kind of outcome that is tangible. Otherwise, it's not empathy. Otherwise, it's virtue signaling. What I mean by this, I spent a while in Africa. I spent a while in Kenya. I met people living in Kibera. Kibera is the biggest slum in Africa. And it's a strange place. It's filthy, but not as filthy as we'd think. It's full of wonderful people. I met these people, I listened to them. I met some people, I listened to them, and I wanted to ask, specifically, what can I do to try to make something better? Like, I've got the empathy for you, and now what can I do about it? And they were going, it's refreshing to have someone who asks us this. We have people who come, they feel sorry for us, and they go away. But that doesn't really help us. So we spent a while, we bounced ideas. There were some people at the recording studio. I showed them a few tricks that they didn't know of how to do things, and that clearly helped them do better recordings. They showed me things I didn't know, so it was a great sharing experience. which they really liked because I was listening to them instead of talking down at them, was going, well, I think you could try this. Let me show you. Tell me what you think. So really based on equal respect. So this is a key part. What outcome are we improving? If we have random empathy for a general group but not specific individuals, I'd suggest that's fake. Having a lot of empathy for, poor African people poor African people, well, which ones? Who? Name names. If you have empathy, what are you doing about it? What specifically are you doing to make their life better? It doesn't have to be much, but if you really have empathy, you're not sitting at home feeling bad because of some random people. You're trying to do something. Now, we could say, well, I feel for them and I'm not trying to work with people in another continent, but I'll try to do something for, kids around the corner or elderly people. Fine. We can't solve every problem. We pick something and we do our best because our empathy translates into specific actions that help specific people. That's fine. When people say, I've got loads of empathy, but I'm never translating it into actions, well, that's virtue signaling. That's fake empathy. We often see that when people have empathy for large groups, but haven't bothered to get to know any specific individuals. And I think that's probably the biggest differentiator. And it doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be sending money. It could simply be, I don't know, liking, how many people have a lot of empathy for poor African people, are on social media but never watch any content made by African people? This is something that drives me crazy. Kenya's got, I think, 60, 80 million inhabitants. There's some really good YouTube creators, and their monetization is unbelievably low because it's Africa, because advertisers don't pay money to watch their videos, because they're mainly African videos. Now, a lot of the content is in English. How many people subscribe to YouTube channels of African content creators and watch maybe one video per month, or comedy videos? Some of them are really funny. How many people do that? Well, we pick what we want to do. We don't have to solve all of the problems, but usually if you share an idea, you go, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could, Google African comedian on YouTube, look for something. I think this is rather key, is really see who has grandiose conversations to try to look good and doesn't follow it up in actions, and who's the person who doesn't talk much about it, but sometimes they'll carry, a granny's bag or help across the road. Actions speak much louder than words. And this is, when you're helping the granny cross the road, that's empathy for one specific, real, tangible person. We only have so much time and energy to give to people, so we're allowed to choose. We have to choose. We can't just give to everyone, because otherwise we never do anything. But observe the people who make a lot of really bold claims, high-level claims, but it doesn't translate, or they want to support causes but nothing specific. This is, I find, where you see the big difference between the fake empathy and the real empathy. And this, one of the things that narcissists do so well is they fake empathy, so they do the big grandiose one, but it doesn't really follow through in claims. And that's one of the things that's so bizarre, is going, well, you work, for example, for the United Nations, for an NGO. You must have this because otherwise it's illogical. No. Some of the worst people I've met were people who worked for NGOs and United Nations. Really cynical, no empathy whatsoever. They were overpaid in unbelievably poor countries, but would never spend a cent of their own money to help anyone. They do the minimum job and then just scoot off. Like, okay, that's fine. But claim that they were better people because they were doing that. Maybe. But then when I spoke with people on the spot, locals, they were the ones saying, it's really strange because we don't understand the difference. Like, they say one thing, what we see is something completely different. That was a quick point on empaths and empathy. Here we go. Let me go through the comments. So the feigned empathy for kids and animals, we'll see if it adds up. I remember this horrible Maldivian guy who claimed to love, he always said that children love me, and every time we saw him around children, he was really awkward, and he was creepy, and he creeped them out, and animals hated him. So he can claim whatever he wants. Let's just see the results. And you have empathy. What do you do about it? Do you sit in your corner and feel sorry? That's not very helpful. Again, the question is, what is the outcome? What are we doing? What are we doing with the empathy? What are we doing with the empathy to help us act? And by the way, another point is, to what extent do we have a balance between empathy for ourselves and empathy for others? When you see, this is something with a lot of people who've been with narcissists, is they will have very high levels of empathy for others and very low levels for themselves. It's important to have a balance, have a healthy level for ourselves and have a healthy level for others, and try to translate it in a way that's constructive and leads to somehow a better outcome for people. Exactly, Steve. Observe. Let's go through this. Yeah, exactly. They feign the concern to social services, schools, children, family, use it as a tool to create a picture. Exactly, they say it, and it's easy to say things. What do we do afterwards? How do we translate it? Words can be very cheap. I care so much about my children's happiness. Okay, what are you doing about it? If the answer is nothing, then maybe you don't care that much. Of course, it looks very nice to posture when it comes to that. And Steve, absolutely. Observe what they do when they believe they're not under scrutiny. This is something, incidentally, we know that narcissists wear a fake mask. They have this fake persona. And it looks really nice when we're looking at them. And when we look away, it often drops. Observe them in situations where they're not comfortable. I saw exactly the same look in the face of two different people. One person, when he was skiing, he claimed he knew how to ski, but it looked like he'd never skied before. And he said he'd forgotten, but you don't really forget. The level of discomfort on his face, it was disturbing, and I was understanding he talked himself into being in a situation where he was out of his comfort zone. So often when they do this, just go along with it, push them out of it. Another person, a woman, she was swimming and she was so uncomfortable. She had the same look on her face, and she went from having a beautiful, seductive smile to being unbelievably ugly and just looking like a strange fish, just blank look and all of this tension inside, like it was about to explode, which made no sense. You put someone in a pool in a hotel and in a nice room with a nice view, and they're looking all weird. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what's happening, is they're out of the comfort zone. The mask is falling, is crumbling. They're trying to hold on for dear life. So observe, look at them when they don't know they're being observed. And it's really eye-opening. That often shows you what's really going on. Yeah, good point, UNA. Empathy without action is merely pity. Another point with this is, if we really have empathy for someone, we believe that they can get their life together unless they have some massive handicap or they're toddlers. Anyone else is capable of getting their own life back on track. And if we feel the need to coddle them, it's actually looking down at them as though they're not capable of doing this, as though they're not real human beings. So when they claim they want empathy, so we solve the problems for them, that's not real empathy. That's pity. It's disrespectful. If we really want to respect someone, we let them grow, we let them solve their problems. And narcissists weaponize this by making us feel guilty. Why? They want our attention, they want our time, they want attention, time, and they want to be the center of our universe. And they weaponize this. So really important to look at that. And yeah, exactly. No specifics, virtue signaling. Yeah, something really interesting, by the way, because also there's a whole industry that's been weaponizing this, and I actually know quite a bit about it, is a lot of the charities and NGOs, they work for causes. So we think, I like the cause, I'll give you money. It's interesting to see how they spend it. And it's not self-evident what the right thing to do is. So you want to give $100 to the World Wildlife Fund, for instance. Well, how much of that goes into admin fees and how much really goes to save the gorillas? You need some of it in admin fees, sure. But then you think, what I think is more helpful is to say, I can choose, if I choose to donate money, with which organization do my $100 go the furthest? And it's not self-evident that it's an organization based in an expensive country in Europe with really high overheads. Maybe it is. But it's good just to see what the options are. If we want our money to go further, I think that's really important. And Charlie, you're welcome. Thank you. Steve, absolutely agreed. We will know them by the fruits. Yeah, it's possible that animals can actually sense the toxic people. I've noticed that when animals are really sensitive. It's really interesting. And yes, you see that with some of the NGO people. It's funny because they think, I'm better than you because I work for the non-profit sector. And you go, yeah, well, at the same time, you've got people. I remember one African woman who was interviewed. I think she was interviewed by Jordan Peterson, I think. She started a company in Africa to rival the soda companies. She said they used to have these beautiful hibiscus drinks. I wonder if it was in Nigeria. I'm not sure. And she went away, studied in the US, got an MBA or something, came back, and everybody was drinking soda. She goes, well, people are getting fat. It's full of sugar. It's disgusting. The hibiscus drink is so much nicer. And she said, well, why can't we even serve our own drink? So she decided, what I'm going to do is I am simply going to be creating a hibiscus drink company. I will employ people. I'll grow the company so it makes profit, so we don't need charity, and I'll pay taxes. And we're going to grow the company so that it's actually a machine that goes around and continues selling something good, employing people, giving them better conditions, offering a product that people benefit from instead of some sugary junk. And because it makes a profit, we can afford to grow and help more people. That's a completely virtuous circle. I, for one, prefer that type of initiative versus one that is simply based on... there we go. That's simply based on asking for charity. I think it's more sustainable, and I think it's more respectful. Oh, Mona, absolutely. Let me see how to do that. Let me scroll up. There we go. Okay, I'm going to remove it. I don't know what that does. Okay, here we go. Remove. Okay, I don't know if that helps. I might simply be... if you want me... Here, Mona, you can leave a comment. If you'd like me to simply delete the chat, I can delete the chat. Okay, if you'd prefer that. No worries. Just send me a message. I can delete the chat after this. All right. Well, okay. This interesting thing with NGOs. I think that on the one hand, the organization creates specific outcomes by the structure, but also the people who climb up in those organizations like that, like many organizations, will favor toxic people climbing to the top. And because quite often outcomes are not really measured, you can have more incompetent people. So there might be some kind of bias. A lot of great people go in, a lot of great people get burnt out and leave and are disgusted. And some great people stay. So, it's a broad generalization I made. And I'm just thinking about generalizations. I keep that for another topic. I think it's been an hour. I think I'm going to wind up now because otherwise I can keep on rambling for a long time. I'll do another one soon. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I really enjoyed this. I'm feeling much better after getting a cold a few weeks ago and being out. I've got a few videos I'm working on, so hopefully I get those uploaded. Thanks a million for joining. Thank you for your support. We've hit, by the way, 10,000 subscribers, which is insane. It's completely crazy. And largely this is thanks to you, to the support, the likes, the comments. It's really weird to be thinking that, just going back 5 years ago, I was in a very, very, very different place. I was slowly beginning to rebuild myself from hitting rock bottom. And I could never fathom that the path that I followed would be helpful for others. And I'd be able to share ideas that would be helpful for others. And even when I did the first videos, I had no intention of doing any kind of YouTube channel. So aside from my thanks, know that your thanks or your support, your likes, that's what has motivated me to continue helping other people. So that directly helps other people. Thank you so much. And yeah, I will see you very soon. Thanks for everything. I wish you a wonderful